as early as 2024, which is blind side of the Pac-12. There's still a formal notification process. This is the two schools to let the Pac-12 know their intentions to leave. USC and UCLA also have to formally apply to the Big Ten, a process that is underway according to a source. Rest in peace, the Alliance. College Game Days, Kirk Herbstreit joining us now alongside.
Deja vu happening, Herbie. We saw this very same story last summer with the announcement that Texas and Oklahoma would be heading to the SEC. What impact do you anticipate that these kinds of moves are going to have on college football as a whole?
I think OU and Texas were the first dominoes, and now USC, UCLA are the next dominoes. And I don't think we're done. I think what Heather is saying is just the reality of our world. We don't have to agree with it. We can jump up and down if we're traditionalists. What in the heck's going on with OU and Texas and the SEC and now USC and UCLA and the Big Ten? Keep your seatbelt on because they're not done. What Heather is saying is real. It's very, very hard for the ACC, the Big 12, and the Pac-12 to compete with the Big Two. And honestly, I think that's our future. I don't know how, I haven't spoken with anybody, but I think that's where this thing, when the dust settles, that's where we're going to be. With about 50 to 55 teams, half of them in the Big Ten, half of them in the SEC. For simplifying it, think AFC, NFC, and the NFL. You're going to have that Saturdays. You're going to have three divisions, West, Middle, and East, or South, and that's what it's going to be. And I think there's going to be some very tough decisions because you're going to keep out a lot of teams that want to be a part of this future, and they're not going to be invited. So it's going to be more of the haves versus the have-nots in big-time college athletics.
And the teams you're referring to will be potentially Power 5 schools that are going to be on the outside as we talk about a potential organization ruled in college football separately from the NCAA. Heather, the reaction, what have you gathered from around the college football world here?
Well, one person within the Pac-12 is already calling themselves the Pac-10, and he told me that this is Bob Bowlesby all over again, referring to the Big 12 commissioner. And he told me we got Soonered and we got horned, obviously referring to OU and Texas. People I've spoken to have said exactly what Kirk said, that this is not over. This is only the first wave of it to fall. Some people have said, what does this mean for the Rose Bowl? You're talking about decades of a college football tradition and partnership between those two conferences. Oh, by the way, who are also a part of the alliance with the ACC. What does this mean for those relationships? So there are a lot of questions, but I think the two big takeaways are that this is not over yet and that college football is certainly at its most volatile point.
Herbie hitting us with the Thanos. This is inevitable. RD, Reese Davis, is going to be joining us here on the show with his perspective on this huge news as well. Thank you. So basketball world could potentially be shifting. Everyone reacting to today's Woj bomb. Kevin Durant wants out of Brooklyn, requesting a trade, sources tell. Woj reportedly on his short list, the Phoenix Suns and the Miami Heat. But per Woj, the Nets, who are working with KD and his reps, will be looking for the best possible deal. By the way, it bears mentioning Durant still has 4 years left on his current contract with the Nets. Let's get to it, Kev. Let's bring in Stephen A. Smith and our NBA reporter, Brian Windhorst. And I'm going to start with you, Stephen A. This trade request from Durant coming just a little over 24 hours after Kyrie officially opted in for next season. Please react.
Well, believe it or not, I'm sad for Brooklyn, but I'm pleasantly surprised to some degree. I think it's about time that Kevin Durant severed ties with Kyrie Irving as teammates. They'll always be brothers, but as teammates, that's not something that needed to continue to happen. Kevin Durant's reputation was being sullied by the day. Every day that he supported Kyrie Irving being his teammate, every day he looks foolish in doing so. Because the bottom line is, spectacular and as great as Kyrie Irving was, too many migraine headaches came along with him. So Kevin Durant finally came to his senses. Miami Heat and the Phoenix Suns are his two primary targets, not necessarily in that order, although he has a home in Miami. The fact of the matter is the Miami Heat would have to pretty much, just mess up the entire roster in order to get him. And then who are you playing with? And so you can't do that. The likelihood is that the Phoenix Suns are the target. DeAndre Ayton, Mikal Bridges, Cameron Johnson, multiple picks. That would be plausible. But from what I'm hearing from the Nets side, they want at least 2 All-Stars, which means that they would want Devin Booker. From what I'm being told on Phoenix's side, there's no way in hell that they're giving up Devin Booker. He's not going anywhere. So it's really come down to a cat and mouse game per se, but Sean Marks has got to get this right. Kevin Durant has 4 years on his contract. He does not have a player option. That makes him very attractive for other teams to want as well. And as a result, Sean Marks is saying we have his rights and we can trade him wherever we want to. We don't have to capitulate to wishes for him going to Phoenix. So it's going to be real interesting to see what transpires.
Wendy, with all that information, how do you put into context here the historic nature of this potential trade request?
It's a completely unprecedented situation and potentially could bring one of the biggest hauls, if not the biggest haul, for a single player in the history of the NBA. And teams have sort of been on the edge of their seats about it since earlier this week. There was a feel that this potentially could happen. It was uncertain as to whether KD would go forward with this, but the vibes were out there. And teams have been preparing the concept of trades, talking to their star players, asking how they felt about playing with Kevin Durant. And the reason this is really unprecedented is that we're really not sure how the leverage is going to work. We are used to seeing star players get what they want in trades, as Stephen A. just said. But we've never seen a star player with 4 years on his contract to try to force a deal like this. I don't know how you want to classify Ben Simmons a year ago, but when that happened, we saw it drag out for 6 months and get incredibly messy and turn into a stalemate. Kevin Durant is not down for that. Kevin Durant wants to play basketball. The Nets know this. But Kevin Durant is also not going to want to go to a team that trades away its star players to get him. He's going to want to go to a team that's in a championship situation. So this may be something that happens quickly, and certainly Durant elected to release this trade demand now for a reason, and that is because his preferred destination of the Phoenix Suns has a player in DeAndre Ayton who is a free agent who could be used in a sign and trade for him. That was strategic. But it could turn out into something where there is this pull and tug between Durant and the Nets as he tries to force his way to a certain spot, and the Nets try to squeeze out the best trade possible. Historically, the star typically wins, but historically, we've never seen this before.
We've also never seen the wheeling and dealing and posturing and everything that went in to get Kyrie and KD together in Brooklyn. And Stephen A., for it to last, less than 30 games when it's all said. In retrospect, how would you describe this era of the Brooklyn Nets?
An unmitigated disaster completely at the doorstep of Kyrie Irving. You can't completely absolve Kevin Durant because he's a superstar who was the face of the franchise, who they did everything for. And if Kevin Durant had stepped up and demanded more of Kyrie Irving and held him accountable, then it might not have come to this. But he didn't do that. Kyrie Irving got there. He did what he wanted to do, when he wanted to do it, how he wanted to do it, whenever he damn well pleased. And they knew there was little to nothing they could do about it because the second Kyrie wanted out, Kevin Durant would want out. And that is proven now. Because even though Kyrie Irving elected to opt into his $36.9 million contract, that doesn't mean he planned on staying with the Brooklyn Nets. He's saying, I'm opting in. I'm going to commit to this 1 year. But you still need to get me up out of here because this is not a place I want to be. Understanding that with teams knowing that that's the last year of his deal, there's plenty of teams that might take him on approaching his last year. Kyrie's already telling folks, he expects to be a Los Angeles Laker, if not sometime this season, then definitely next summer, when the Lakers are going to have close to $80 million available in cap space. He's already telling people he's going to reunite with LeBron James in L.A., and he is going to wear the same uniform that Kobe Bryant once wore. So anybody that gets him, it's on a 1 year deal, and then after that, he'll be going in L.A. You're Kevin Durant. You saw what the Golden State Warriors did. You saw what you did as a two-time champion in Golden State. So now you're imagining pairing with CP3 and Devin Booker and thinking you'll be able to make some noise out there. Either way you slice it, we will never forget how dysfunctional this situation was in Brooklyn over the last 3 years. And as a player, you cannot blame Kevin Durant. The second he got healthy, he was there all the time and played like an MVP. But you can blame Kyrie Irving because things always seemed to get in the way of him playing basketball, evidenced by missing 123 games over 3 years. That was a catastrophe, and it's going to have rippling effects because when the next collective bargaining negotiations come up, I promise you, there's going to be a Kyrie Irving rule in there somewhere because owners are not going to forget the kind of shenanigans they witnessed.
Stephen A., you've mentioned this. You've talked about that several times on NBA Countdown during the season. So, Wendy, with all of that conversation, if Durant's traded, Kyrie Irving's future, does he play one game as a Net? Do you anticipate he's gone?
There will be no seeing them in the fall. Kyrie Irving is out of town as fast as he possibly can, and he is focused, as Stephen A. said, on forcing himself to the L.A. Lakers. In talking to league executives over the last couple hours, the value of Kyrie Irving in a trade has absolutely plummeted. They know that he's going to be a pure rental. If he doesn't want to go to the situation he's been going to, it's unclear what he will do. He, as Stephen A. has said many times, he hasn't even been motivated to play in places he's wanted to be, much less in places he doesn't want to be. He is trying to force the Lakers into, the Nets into doing a deal, something built around Russell Westbrook, which is what he wanted in a sign and trade earlier this week so he can get to L.A. now. The question is, would the Lakers would have to incentivize that with some sort of draft pick? The Lakers at this point could say, you